From 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening, it's me, Bev Turner, off the bench for Dewbs Co with three of the most opinionated panellists and three great debates. I don't know about you, but I no longer know what year it is. Is it 1953 with talk of living by candlelight due to incoming energy rations and a return to pounds and ounces? Or are we living in a dystopian future where there's nobody left to staff our services with trains and planes not able to leave because there's no one to operate them? While the government announces an immigration policy based on intellectual snobbery, handpicking only the very highly educated to work here. Lots to discuss, all that tonight, and an eye-popping assessment of how much fatter we all are than when the Queen took to the throne. Don't go anywhere. Here's the news headlines with Polly.
Bev, thank you. Good afternoon. The top stories. The French government has apologised for the disorganisation at the Champions League final on Saturday, blaming fake tickets for the chaotic scenes. Skirmishes outside the stadium led to English fans being pepper-sprayed and even tear-gassed by French police. The French authorities say more than half of the 29 people arrested were British. Boris Johnson has urged UEFA to launch a formal investigation into what went wrong. The French Interior Ministry admits they were unprepared for the sheer volume of fans.
We regret that a disorganisation in the admission of British supporters, contrary to that of the Spanish supporters, and we've observed that 30 to 40,000 British fans, a figure confirmed by UEFA, the Stade de France, the French Football Federation, as well as the police, found themselves in and around Stade de France either without a ticket or with a fake ticket.
Meanwhile, Ted Borley's consortium group has officially completed today the £4.25 billion sale of Chelsea Football Club. Mr Borley says he plans to build on Chelsea's remarkable history of success. And the sale ends Roman Abramovich's 19-year ownership. He was sanctioned by the British government in March for his connections to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. All proceeds of the sale will go to support humanitarian causes in Ukraine. Two more Conservative MPs are calling for Boris Johnson's resignation following the publication of Sue Gray's report into Partygate. Former Culture Minister Jeremy Wright says there's real and lasting damage from the report. And MP for Carshalton and Wallington, Elliot Colburn, has handed in his letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership. Coal-fired power plants, which were due to close later this year, may need to stay open to provide backup electricity for the UK this winter. A government spokesperson says the decision is due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and major disruptions to the flow of Russian gas. Meanwhile, the price of the cheapest pasta in the UK has risen by 50% since April last year. The Office for National Statistics also says the price of bread and minced beef went up by 16%. That comes as inflation hits a 40-year high. The police watchdog has confirmed it's investigating a third case of a child being strip-searched by the Metropolitan Police. The force is already being investigated for two previous controversial cases in which two teenage girls were searched. The mother of one of the girls told the BBC her 15-year-old autistic daughter was strip-searched in front of male officers. The Independent Office for Police Conduct confirmed it was investigating a complaint but wouldn't provide further details. Northern Ireland's Parliament has failed to elect a new Speaker. Two nominees for the role, representing the Ulster Unionists and the SDLP, failed to secure the necessary cross-community support. The DUP has refused to back the election of a Speaker as part of its protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Sinn Féin Vice President Michelle O'Neill says her party will keep having the Assembly recalled until a new Speaker is elected.
The people have spoken and they now want action. They do not want protest. They want the parties and every single MLA elected to this democratic institution to get their sleeves rolled up and to get down to business.
The Spanish Prime Minister says NATO's support for Ukraine is unbreakable and that President Putin will not achieve his objectives. Russian forces are advancing into Severodonetsk. That's the largest city that Ukrainian forces still partly control in the eastern Luhansk region. After personally visiting the area yesterday, President Zelensky says around 90% of the region's buildings are damaged and that there are absolutely no telecommunications in the city. Meanwhile, here the MOD says Russia's fighting forces are experiencing poor morale, discipline problems and credible reports of desertion. And this year's winners of the Eurovision Song Contest have raised over £710,000 for Ukraine's military by selling their contest trophy. A wave of public support saw the Kalush Orchestra triumph with their entry Stefania, but the band sold their crystal microphone in a Facebook auction. The money will fund military drones for the Ukrainian armed forces. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now Dewbs Co is with Bev.
Good evening, I am Bev Turner, the hired help this week, while Michelle takes a well-earned half-term break. Thank you for having me back. You always make me feel very welcome, so please say hello to us in all the usual ways. Now with us until 7 o'clock. The leader of the Heritage Party and a man who today called for GB News' Calvin Robinson to replace the COVID-struck Archbishop of Canterbury at the Jubilee Bash, David Curtin. Writer, broadcaster and rising star of the opinionated youth, Dominique Samuels. And the Chief Executive of the New Economics Foundation and a very busy mum of three who has still made it here on half-term, Mayata Fan Bula. And as I said, drop us a line with your take on our big stories, gbviews at gbnews.uk or on Twitter at gbnews. I will get to as many of them as we can in the next hour. Can I also remind you to subscribe to our YouTube page? You can watch live or see the best bits from the channel when you search GB News. Now, calling all wee willy winkies, we might soon be running through the town with our candles, or at least our mobile phone torches, as the government is said to be preparing for the worst-case scenario of electricity rationing this winter. I kid you not. They are blaming Russia, of course, but we aren't dependent on Russian gas completely. So what exactly is going on? Do we need to start stocking up on candles? How do we prepare for a winter energy crisis? Who do I come to first on this? Who wants to go? Dominique. Now, you're 23. Mm-hmm. Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see a time when the government said we might just turn down your electricity for a bit?
No, and it's an absolutely terrifying prospect. And I think the issue with this is that, of course, it's more politically expedient to blame it on Russia. You know, it's the Russian invasion. Despite the fact, you know, we don't actually depend on Russian gas that much, but obviously we're still affected by supply chain issues. The problem is, a lot of this has actually been caused by the government's obsession with the green agenda. And it's not just this government, it's previous governments. And the Centre for Policy Studies has done some fantastic work on this, and they've sadly been proven right. Because in 2015, they said that we are fast running into a scenario where capacity is not meeting demand, and you will get to a point where there will be power shortages. In 2015, they said over the last 10 years, electricity bills have risen by 131% in real terms, and that was quite a while ago. The government has ignored them. One thing they did say, though, is to scrap the UK's high carbon price support, and again, this is to do with the green agenda, which is designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by adding costs to them. So if the government got rid of that, perhaps that would help, amongst other things too. We've closed power stations, but not actually sought to replace them. A lot of this is our own making, sadly.
So, Mayata, if we've got this, thanks, Dominique, if we've got this green drive and yet we have failed to harness our renewable energy, how has that paradox been allowed to occur?
Well, look, I think there are Two things to say. First, let's put it in perspective. This is government contingency planning for worst-case scenario. We're unlikely to be there because we have a relatively diversified mix. I think the key for the short term, by the way, is storage and storage capacity. But to the point on green, which is actually completely wrong, firstly, the way in which we build our energy security. Remember, coal, oil is a finite resource. At some point, it's going to run out. So the beauty of renewables is it actually provides other energy sources within our mix. So irrespective of green, we were going to have to diversify anyway.
I think
and that's what we do. The challenge has been the government's move to renewables has been really slow. Take something like onshore wind, for example. We've had a moratorium. So we have huge amounts of wind because we're a really windy country, but we haven't had a moratorium on building onshore wind. So my thing is, the big wake-up call is diversify quickly, move towards renewables at the same time as we reduce the energy that we use, energy efficiency. The rate in which we've insulated our homes has declined by 90% since 2012.
Yeah. David, do you know what I find a little baffling is 2 years ago when the pandemic started, I had a friend who works in oil and gas. And when I said to him, none of this makes sense, what's going on? And he said, well, we've known for a long time that the powers that be at the World Economic Forum and other large non-governmental organisations have been saying for a long time that there are too many people on this planet and we need to organise them. And I said, this is ridiculous. And I'm so tired of these theories starting to be proven true. So his idea, his notion was, under the auspices of a pandemic, we are going to see significant social changes, such as rationing of our power in order to save the planet.
Oh, yeah, I read about this quite a while ago.
Is that going on?
Because
Because please tell us if that's what it is, because I think we'd all much rather know if we're being manipulated.
Yeah, I think it is going on. I think these elites in the World Economic Forum and other places do have an agenda, and they want to push this green agenda, as Dominique said, and which is completely mad. We've had coal, we have gas. They provide, or they can provide, our energy for years and years to come because we got so much of it under the ground.
But they are finite.
Well, they are finite, but
they will run out at some point.
But there's enough in the UK to last us for decades, if not centuries.
Exactly.
And coal as well, particularly. There's a lot of that.
And because of these unforeseen circumstances, we're going to end up burning more coal anyway. The government has had to bring forward planned closures of coal-powered plants precisely because we don't have the capacity.
Yeah, to postpone the closure.
Because we haven't moved quick enough on renewables.
You could say it's because...
the renewables are no good. They don't provide energy when the sun stops shining and the wind stops blowing.
Well,
so we need a permanent backup of either nuclear or fossil fuels all the time.
It doesn't work like that. The whole point is you use renewables when the wind is shining, you put it in storage and then you use it when you need it.
But we've not how the technology. It's not just the UK. That's not just the UK.
That's how the technology actually works.
I agree that you need to be able to store it, to use it when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. I get that. That's what happens.
You still need to deal with that with fossil fuels as well. That's how it actually works.
However, is this just a UK policy problem or is it a global issue? So you can't really just be the government's not done this because, so many other countries haven't done this.
And I think what a lot of people will be concerned about listening to this debate as well is how we've managed to get ourselves into this position in terms of our national generation, our power security, our energy security. Why are we so reliant on Russia?
Sorry, they've closed 11 coal power stations since 2015, which is ridiculous. We've only got 3 left, and they're supposed to close this year. I mean, it's good that they're thinking about keeping them open, but then, of course, as well as the crazy pursuit of net zero policy, there's the whole situation with Russia and sanctions on Russia, which is completely avoidable. I mean, we shouldn't have put sanctions on Russia. That's what I said from the very beginning, and they've backfired on us because now there's all the tension. They keep escalating the tension rather than de-escalating and getting back to normal relations, so there won't be a problem this year with the supply of oil and gas from Russia. That's what we need to get back to.
I don't want to go down a tangent in terms of whether we should or should not have put sanctions on Russia, but Mayata, is David... You're going to tell me he's wrong, right? In terms of saying that we should be pushing on with our non-renewables, at least in the short term?
Of course we should. It's an absolute no-brainer. Even if you don't believe in net zero, which I think is a bit bonkers, but that's fine. Let's park that for a second.
That's a bit rude.
Even if you don't believe in it, because
a bit bonkers.
Despite the fact that all the science is saying that the impacts of not dealing with this will be absolutely catastrophic here and in other countries, despite the fact that we're seeing the impacts of it with islands sinking underneath the sea. But let's park that for a second.
Under the sea. The sea level hasn't gone up at all. This is the scaremongering. This is the scaremongering you get from the IPCC.
It's where the mainstream scientists are. But let's park that for a second. Even if you don't believe in the agenda, surely you must believe in the idea that we should diversify and mix, because that's the way we build security. And if we have the capacity to generate energy through onshore, if we have the capacity to generate energy through wind or solar, why on earth would we not do it on security grounds?
If there are new forms of energy which can survive on the free market and without,
why would you
I'm
not,
answering the question. So if you let me answer the question, I will answer the question. So if we can find new forms of energy, new sources of energy, which can survive on the free market without huge government subsidies, which put up, if you please let me answer, which put up people's energy bills. It's not, because it gets a load of government subsidies, especially the offshore wind farms. They have huge government subsidies in the tens of billions of pounds, and that's what's putting up people's energy bills. So that's really the wrong strategy for the country. We need to continue to use fossil fuels until we have a viable alternative, which isn't going to put huge amounts of money on people's bills and keeps on putting the price of petrol up. And I think that's where people are in the real world, rather than maybe an academic department where you sit.
I mean, just to unpick a few things. Firstly, we subsidise fossil fuels as well. We subsidise all of our energy mix. And actually, if you look at the data, you take something like wind. Yes, we subsidised it when it was new technology. It is now cheaper than fossil fuels. That's the point. Renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels, because once you've built your wind power, it's free. It's just the wind coming or not. Then it's about storage. So even if you don't believe in net zero, which I do for other reasons, if you don't believe in it, just purely economic sense, it makes sense to diversify it. It makes sense to move to a diversity of energy mix that are cheaper.
The problem is you don't have enough wind and solar power all the time to supply people's energy. And what we're talking about here is the winter, particularly the peak times in the morning and evening peak. There simply won't be the energy there. That's why there is the threat of blackouts, again combined with the Russia situation. So we need to have continual production of fossil energy from fossil fuels in order to make sure the lights don't go out. So we need to make sure that the coal power stations that they were going to close stay online. And there's not enough time to build new nuclear power stations, which they're talking about. That's a good thing, but it's not going to come online for years and years and years, because they take a long time to build.
Do we all agree that actually what's happening at the moment with the fact that our power, all our gas and electricity bills are so extortionate and they're going so high, that we are all making extra effort to cut down our bills, and therefore that probably is good for the planet, regardless of how you think we should be getting our energy?
But, I mean, who's doing
at the moment it's summertime. It's good to be energy efficient, absolutely, but we don't want the situation when the winter comes when people need heating. Otherwise they might, freeze to death or something.
Go on, Dominique.
And this is the thing, poorer people, the masses, because most people aren't, rich, they aren't billionaires. We're being convinced that. And there's virtue in suffering. And there isn't, because the people that work for the supranationals, the people that work for the massive conglomerates, they're not the ones that are going to be making all of these energy sacrifices and doing all of this rationing. It's people that can't really afford it. And that's the issue. While I think that, you probably believe that the green agenda and net zero is this commendable thing that's going to save the earth. What it's doing actually is it's handing all of this power to government, to supranational organisations, and people that I don't believe really have the best interests of individuals at heart.
Ultimately, again, Mayata, there will be a very few people who get very, very rich from the green industry.
Happening.
It's already happening. Whilst the majority of us are worried about putting on our fire.
100% on that. So for me, there are two things. The transition to net zero doesn't have to be painful, and actually the role of government is in order to smooth that transition and make sure it's just. Secondly,
do you trust government to do that, though?
Secondly, there is a world in which we transition and there is a handful of people. In the way, by the way, that a lot of our economy works, it benefits a handful. And for me, actually, there's huge opportunities. So, for example, you look at what the Netherlands have have done, a massive onshore wind farm that's owned by people in the community. So when there is investment that goes in, the dividends of that goes to ordinary people. They have a stake in it. And actually, I think there's a massive opportunity to say, as we build this new technology and this new infrastructure, we should own it. It should be in our hands and work in our interest.
But is that what the people that are pushing this agenda are saying, though? Because even we're all talking about the IPCC's climate report. Even they themselves said that we are going to need massive societal change in order to pursue this net zero agenda that they want. What does that societal change mean? I mean, in their actual report, they were citing Marxists with no actual critique of what was being said. Does it mean that we all suffer as a collective and those that hold the levers of power don't? And I think that's what we sort of have to be a bit careful
Does
about.
it mean that we even understand what that means for most of us? And does it mean that we need to have some sort of referendum on net zero?
What's really frightening is some of these people are now talking about carbon credits and carbon social credits and capping and so on. So you will have a certain amount of carbon that you can use every day. And people are talking about central bank digital currencies, which will be programmed so you can only spend them on certain amounts of certain things, other things, and carbon will be...
Take my attitude.
So I think the two things to say is that there isn't, of course, any transition is difficult. Any transition we've had is always difficult, but there is a way in which you do it in a way to protect people and ensure the upside. And there's a huge opportunity in all of this. And for me, you know, in a world where, quite frankly, our economy doesn't work for people are shafted all the time, there is an opportunity for us to use this transition to shake things up and to actually deliver some better jobs, to deliver dividends in terms of living standards. It has to be deliberate. But the idea that we could just sleepwalk into, so even if the scientists are 50% right, and I think they're 100% right, but even if they're 50% right, the impacts on living standards will be absolutely profound for people in this country and people worldwide. That's the sacrifice, that's the risk you're willing to take, not which seems to me completely out of whack.
Can we go to a quick email? Ray has emailed to say, how does your panel suggest we store electricity from wind and solar? It's ridiculous. We have 40 years of coal in the ground, plus gas and oil. Nuclear has to be the long-term answer. Mieta.
So that's what we do now. So the way that the capacity market works is that we generate energy even from fossil fuels and we store it. Now, one of the problems we have in this country is that we don't have enough storage facilities, which is one of the things that the government's looking to do in order to deal with this issue. But we already store our energy. That's how it works. We store it when we don't need it so much, and then we release it when we have high demand.
There's only a tiny amount of storage capacity, and the problem with that is it relies on, you need cobalt and lithium, and the environmental problems of mining that are immense. You know, we all hear about the children who have to mine this in Congo and so on, that, you know, live in slave-like conditions.
Isn't there also just a massive problem with our housing as well? Because the reason that we've all got such high bills as well is our houses are so poorly insulated. And that seems to me is something that the government could be doing really easily. Am I right?
100%. So the rate at which we've insulated our homes, as I said, has gone down 90% since 2012. And so this is something you could do and do quite quickly. You know, we've been saying great homes upgrade. If you had a national effort, said this is one of our #1 missions, you could insulate millions of homes over the course of the next 3 years. And you start with low-income households. You start with households in social housing. That's the way we bear down on bill. It has to be part of the answer. And we can do it relatively quickly.
Yeah. OK, right, thanks, guys. OK, coming up, new rules will bring the brightest and the best to the UK, but is that at the expense of our homegrown talent? Coming up after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, and the left fights the right, and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News. I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Join us for a special GB News event.
The celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
From pageantry here at the Palace
to the parties in your street.
We'll bring you 4 days of
unforgettable moments.
This bank holiday weekend.
Join us live up and down the country as we share your memories
of Her Majesty's extraordinary reign.
Send us your stories, photographs and videos
at jubilee@gbnews.uk.
Come and celebrate with us
on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs Co with me until 7. My panel tonight, David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party, writer and broadcaster Dominique Samuels, and the chief executive of the New Economics Foundation, Miata van Bulen. Now, the brightest and the best will soon be coming to Britain. As part of a drive to attract talent to the UK, visas are to be given to graduates from the world's most prestigious universities. It's a move towards the government's new points-based immigration policy after ending the freedom of movement for EU nationals. So the government says it's putting talent and ability first rather than where somebody comes from. OK, so let us go to our panel. Dominique, turning to you first, is this a step in the right direction?
Well, for me, I am explicitly against more immigration. I understand that immigrants contribute economically to this country massively. And in terms of high-skilled migration, there doesn't seem to be that much of an impact on the jobs market and people's wages. However, I just do think that already universities, for example, have an extremely high dependence on foreign national students. I saw it myself. I've recently left university. And I would just like for us to have less focus on importing workers and importing talent and more focus on actually cultivating that talent here because it exists. You know, we have a skills gap in this country where I don't think we invest enough in our own people, and rather we look abroad too much, and that's the critique I would have of this.
What university did you go to?
The University of York.
Is that considered to be one of the top 50 in the country? In the world?
I don't know if in the world.
Probably not.
Probably,
so
yeah.
You wouldn't be here. Well, you would not be clever enough, Dominique Samuels, to be here with all of your fantastic contribution that you make to this country.
Well, I mean, it's a Russell Group university in this country, so it is deemed a good university, and it's probably in the top 50 in this country. I'm not sure about the world, though I think it's probably quite high up. But the thing is, I'm British, I'm not an immigrant, so this doesn't apply to me.
You see, my worry is, if they are hand-picking them from these top 50 of the world's top universities, it doesn't necessarily going to be that they're the most hard-working or the most capable, because some of these, particularly the international universities, they're only accessed by the people who've got enormous family money to enable them to be there. And I was chatting to somebody in the office here actually today who was saying that on a course that she's familiar with, there are 30 students, 28 of them are Chinese. It is a British university. And they're not particularly good, but they have to pass them because their parents have paid for them to be here and to pay these enormous fees. Now,
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that. But aren't we running the risk, David, of having some students arriving here with an excellent education but not necessarily a good work ethic?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is a ridiculous scheme. Immigration is way too high as it is, and this is just going to allow more people to come to the country that perhaps we don't need. You know, the people who are from some of these universities who are good, you know, who are really talented, like, say, someone's from MIT, they've got a PhD in nuclear physics, well, they could come to the country anyway on an employment visa sponsored by someone who specifically wants them to come here to do a specific job, or they could come on a business visa if they want to start a business. But then you may get someone, say, who's come from Berkeley University, who's done gender studies, who's not going to contribute anything to the country at all. Why would you want them to come in?
There's nothing wrong with gender studies.
They're just going to come
you use it, right?
talk a load of nonsense, aren't they? We don't
Depends
want them
how
here.
you use your understanding. You might go out there and fight for the right sort of gender studies. I can't help but think. But at the moment, I am living in a country where there is not enough people to staff any of the cafes, the shops, the trains I go into. Where has everybody gone, Miata? And are these genuinely the type of people that we need here? Don't we need more folk who are prepared to do the less paid jobs that our lazy British teenagers won't do?
Yeah, look, I think a couple of things. I completely agree with the point about upskilling and actually investing in skills and having a skill system that works for people, because at the moment we don't, it's very broken. But we also have to recognise that, you know, we've got big labour market gaps. So all well and good, they can have this scheme for, you know, high educated graduates from whatever universities, but the big labour shortages are in construction, they're in agriculture where we don't have people, they're in hospitality, they're in social care. So we're seeing huge, and with all the will in the world, even if you're to train your own people, it takes a matter of time. So we need the whole point of our immigration system was that it was supposed to be responsive to the needs. And if there are big gaps, I don't understand.
But surely the government should have focused on this during our transition out of the European Union.
Oh, yes,
instead it isn't. I mean, there was the crisis with the HGV drivers. People that have been campaigning for Brexit were saying for years, we need to make the jobs that British people are seemingly apparently too lazy to do, we need to make those jobs actually more attractive and make people actually want to do them. That's the problem.
You can't make strawberry picking very attractive.
No, I mean, for example, with HGV drivers, there was an issue with the supply of those because a lot of European workers went home during the pandemic. All of a sudden, we realise, hey, let's raise the pay and actually make people say, oh, I want to do this job where I have to be on the road for hours and work extremely unsociable hours and I can't really see my family that much. That is the answer. Of course, I understand there are short-term issues to address, but we can't keep supplementing the problems that we have in this country with people from abroad. It's just...
But then if we've got somehow we do have a crisis in our labour market at the moment. You just have to go to any business and see that they are struggling. I was in a cafe the other day with my mum and we went in to get a little sandwich and she said, we can't give you anything to eat, we haven't got a chef. I said, you're a cafe. She said, I know, but we haven't got a chef. I said, you can't even knock me up a cheese toastie. Well, we haven't got a chef. We can give you coffee. And it's like, what world are we living in? Where have they gone, David? Where is everybody?
There are 800,000 NEETs in this country, people between 16 and 24 not in education, employment or training.
I can tell you where they are. They're watching Netflix in their bedrooms.
Yeah, well, we need to get them out from their bedrooms and actually doing a job. And there's enough there to do the entry-level jobs that you're talking about, making sandwiches, working in a coffee shop.
Do we force them? What do you do?
They need, first of all, to get a decent wage, you know, that's going to attract them to work there. But I think also sometimes, I hate to say this, there are too many benefits for people who could be working. And that is the push and pull factor. You need to address that because for some people, it's easier to stay on benefits. I know it's hard to say.
It is. I'm sorry. That is the truth.
It is.
Can I just give me 10 seconds? And the group you're talking about don't even access benefits.
There are some people, you know, that it's easier to stay on benefits than go and get an entry-level job because they only get a little bit more money if they go and get an entry-level job.
That's true. I know someone
personally
who has this basic job. They want to work, however, they stay under a certain amount of hours for their work because they won't get universal credit anymore, and so it doesn't actually make sense for them to increase their hours, and they're not going to get that much money. So well, they want to be dependent on the state for that reason.
Where I agree with you is that we need to increase wages in the labour market, and for certain jobs they have been too low for a very long time. I don't think that's actually the fault of immigration. I think that's to do with other problems with our labour market, and we need to solve that. But in the end, the purpose of immigration, if you say you want control over it, is to say, what do we need? Where can we build up our own talent? Where we can't, how can we open up? That's how an immigration system should work. And there is nothing incompatible with saying we're going to build up our talent base. We've got to do that anyway. We have to increase wages. We have to do that anyway. But let's have an immigration system that is flexible and reflects what we need in our labour market. And that doesn't mean undercutting immigrants that come here and paying them poverty wages. That is as wrong as undercutting our own people.
When you say we have to increase wages, I mean, that's a function of the free market. Businesses decide what to pay their employees. And if there's only a limited number of people
there's
who can do
something
a
called
job,
a minimum wage or a living wage,
So
right? Which sets a which they don't, and it's undercut, and that's part of the problem.
Of course, they pay the minimum wage, but they can pay more than the minimum wage if they need someone to go and work for them. So, you know, they have to be competitive in terms of the price that they give for their labour and an hourly wage in order to attract people.
But just to sort of defend the employers at the moment, in the building industry, for instance, you know, wood has just gone up 70%. And, you know, other costs across the building industry are up at least 20% across the board. Those bosses have to simultaneously pay their labourers, their workers, their skilled workers as well, their plumbers, their electricians more, whilst also managing these costs and whilst also creating a product which is affordable to their customer.
But yeah,
I've never known it so bad as we are at the moment. It's this terrible vicious cycle.
Yeah, that is one of the problems, because at the same time, although I agree that paying poverty wages is obviously wrong, when you've got an employer that probably isn't, you know, a massive corporation, it's probably a small to medium-sized business. If you've got someone that's willing to work for literal pennies because they have less economic burden, for example, all they need is a flat because they're just one person and they're earning their wages and they're sending money back to Poland. Obviously, you're going to say to that person, all right, great, I'll pay you this amount and I get to supplement my business and make a living for my family. So I think it's important not to demonise the employers themselves, but more so the system that enables such unfairness to continue, I think.
I was talking to somebody today that she employs a lot of young adults and teenagers, and she was saying that she's never seen a generation like the current sort of 18, 19-year-olds, she said, who've basically been locked down for 2 years, who haven't had the work experience, they haven't had the Saturday jobs, they haven't travelled. And she said, I'm trying to employ them, and they come in and they say, I can't do more than a 4-hour day. And she said, what do you mean you can't do more than a 4-hour day? They say, well, I can't work all day. And she said, those who had jobs before the lockdowns are fine. They've got that work ethic. But she said, I don't know what to do. I can't. She said, Bev, I can't get the staff. I've got them. They won't do the work. What have we done to this generation? How old are your kids, Miata? They're little still.
Yeah, they're still little, 4 and 7, so they've got a while.
Oh, well,
shop them out.
God only knows what's going to be left by the time they need a job in 14 years. Universal basic income, they'll be fine.
I have noticed that as well, especially since I moved to London. In service-facing roles, you know, when I go to the shop or when I go to a restaurant, I am IKEA as well. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that.
Oh no,
I'm regularly faced with people that remind me of what I was like when I was about 17. I used to work in TK Maxx
those years ago
as a Christmas temp, and I know it was not that, no. But the first thing on my mind was earning my wage so I could get my nails done and buy some clothes and go home. I wasn't really focusing on how to treat the customer well or to make sure that they got what they needed. But we're in a situation now where businesses can actually save money by employing younger people. So therefore, you get a line of disgruntled teenagers that actually don't really give a damn.
No, they don't want to be there.
No, they just want to go home.
And also, just having these businesses locked down for so long has done something to the ethos of everybody working there.
Yeah, the whole thing is messed up the country. It's messed up how people socialise. It's messed up how people relate to employment and think about employment and society and everything. It's a terrible 2 years. We need a lot of healing in this country to get back to where we should be. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to have to get through it, and people are going to have to bite the bullet and get down to an 8-hour day's work if they need the money to pay the bills.
Well, let's see what Jeffrey has said on Twitter. Thank you, Jeffrey. We are overcrowded in the UK. He says in England, where 90% 90% of immigrants settle. We have one of the highest population densities in the developed world, higher than most of Europe. We need to stop now, invest in providing family structures to enhance childbirth and the growth of Indigenous families. Blimey. You're lining us all up to impregnate us, Jeffrey. That's a bit harsh. George, great points, Dominique. A lot of people are agreeing with you, Dominique. Let's unlock our own talent instead of pushing them down. We want to unlock talent. We have an education system. This is almost could be a conversation about whether our education system is fit for purpose, to be honest. And Adrian has said, young people are better off on the dole. That's why they won't work. They pay more and some might work. There's no incentive for them to get off their backsides. I would also not necessarily blame the benefit system for that, but actually slightly indulgent parents as well, I'm afraid. And Fred, I've just come back from a long weekend in Warwickshire. The hotel was packed with youngsters doing every job possible for good wages. How refreshing that was. Good to hear, Fred. Good to know. And David has said far too many people working in the public sector doing non-productive jobs and being paid too much for doing them. I'm not sure the public sector is... I don't know. Is the public sector paying people too much? Not
no. At the top it is.
At the top it is. You're absolutely right. Not the 17-year-olds. You're right. And Peter has said, come to Scarborough. As you leave the train station, you will see who is actually in the country at the moment. Eastern Europeans on low wages living in multi-occupancy housing. Scarborough was the first holiday resort in the UK. It is not the place to visit for a holiday at the moment. I think it's probably a bit harsh to say it's not the place to visit at the moment because there are lots of Eastern Europeans in there, presumably wanting to keep some of our industries alive.
I mean, I think the wider point is a lot of our beauty spots have changed as a result of social decay and probably neglect, but also increased levels of immigration.
Yeah,
I'm afraid
well, it is a period of immense change. Some of our coastal towns had never been so popular. That's the other thing. A lot of people moving out of cities after the lockdown and moving into the countryside. So anyway, there is. Sometimes I think I can't wait to a 12 months' time and we look back and work out where we are now. where we were now compared to where we're going to be, because it just feels like change is coming thick and fast all the time, doesn't it? Right,
not good ones.
Coming up, not good ones. Are you ready for your street party? Maybe you should think again about what treats to serve. We were much healthier when the Queen was crowned, so do we need to go back to 1950s menus to solve the obesity crisis? Put down your tea and don't go anywhere.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, Trigonometry podcast host Konstantin Kisin, positive professor Carol Sikora and Neil Oliver break down the issues that matter to you. And as ever, I'll be joined by my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster and Loose Women star Carol McGiffin. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Bev Turner, until 7 o'clock. My panel are luckily still here. David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party, writer and broadcaster Dominic Samuels, and the chief executive of the New Economics Foundation, Miata Farnbula. Now, we're all getting ready to make some sweet treats for our Platinum Jubilee celebrations, are we not? Now, think before you do. This is a mean story to do, isn't it, on a weekend when we're meant to be celebrating? The average woman is 20 pounds heavier today than she was in 1950. When Elizabeth became Queen, Britain still had some of the rationing imposed in the war, and apparently we were all healthier for it. So would returning to a 1950s diet help solve the obesity crisis? Now, of course it would, but are any of us realistically ever going to do that, Dominique?
No, and I think, I think it's a pretty weird article because, surely we shouldn't go back to rationing. It's a bit weird. But at the same time, I get the point. I don't necessarily think that, it's because we're not rationing in the way that we used to. I simply think it's because modern food is packed full of processed sugars, refined carbohydrates. So the average person just really isn't getting the same level of nutrients that they used to get from their food, because we put so much more toxins and chemicals in our food, which, by the way, this vegan drive that's been shoved down our throats, where people are saying, oh, you need to be vegan to save the planet, it's also so much healthier for you. The fried stuff that you get from McDonald's and Burger King, they have tons more chemicals and things in them. We don't know the long-term health effects of those, for one. For two, they're just as unhealthy as, eating a bit of fried chicken. So...
Well, let me tell you why these sorts of articles come about, because obviously with the Jubilee, you've got a lot of lazy journalists just sitting around going, what are we going to write about that we can tie into the Jubilee? I know, obesity is normally a good one. But it does allow us, does it not, this piece was in the Telegraph today, it does allow us to sit and reflect on the change. I was just saying before, it'd be interesting to see in a year's time, look back where we're at now. I think these sorts of momentous occasions in our life do allow a little reflection, don't they, Miata? And do you think that there are lessons that we can learn, or is just the genie out of the bottle when it comes to diet and obesity, and we're never going to go back to being as healthy as we used to be?
No, I think there are definite lessons that we can learn. And actually, I think a big part of it is processed foods and sugars. So I think there's things that we can do. There's part of it is about education. Part of it is actually the cost of things, In the end, clean, fresh food tends to be more expensive than processed food. And then I think it also comes down to regulation, which I know will just wind these guys up, but it generally does, which is that, actually you can change the way the industry works and produces food by regulating content. And I think that is part of the mix as well. So I think you need a bit of both.
Do you mean government intervention for controls on big business? I don't think we wouldn't disagree with that, would we?
What do you mean?
Like sugar tax?
The content of
you mean?
No. I
calories have to be on packaging.
Yeah. No, I mean,
definitely are. The government shouldn't be regulating food in a way that people can't choose. I mean, it's up to people to make the wise choices on the food.
But David, it's too much. It's too much.
This bog off, for example, buy one get one free, and they banned that for a number of years. They've just said, OK, we're going to unban it now. Well, thank goodness for that. But that's the kind of thing that the government tries to regulate, which they shouldn't, because it interferes with the market. And then we need to trust people to make wise choices about what they eat and what they do. But yeah, this is true in a way, though. I do agree with the premise of the article, because in the 50s, as you both said, there were less processed food. We have much more now, so that's unhealthy to eat a lot of processed food. But also lifestyles were far more active, I think.
Yeah, that's
we
a
have
big
a lot
one.
of sedentary life now.
Let's have a look. We've done a little comparison of diets in this country in the 50s, I think, compared to now. If we have a look at this, so all right. right, here we go. 1950s, breakfast would have been a slice of toast and a boiled egg. Lunch, corned beef sandwich. Bill Gates wouldn't be happy about that. Corned vegan sandwich, Dominique. Dinner, pork chops, boiled potatoes, swede and carrots, tinned peaches and custard. Some people go, well, that seems quite sort of, you know, that was my childhood right there, even though I wasn't born in the 50s. Right, and today's menu, cereal with milk and toast. Yep, full of sugar, full of gluten. Not the gluten necessarily bad, but a lot of wheat. Lunch, cheese and ham sandwich with dressing, biscuits and crisps. Dinner, chicken nuggets, chips, baked beans or pasta dish. Ice cream with chocolate sprinkles. Yeah. You see...
It does look tastier, though.
It does look. This is the trouble, isn't it? It's making me quite hungry. But isn't a big part of this as well, not just that we're choosing such, and like you say, the hidden sugars, but isn't it also the fact that we've got so much more time on our hands? Weren't we eating less because we were busier and we couldn't just pick up our phones and go, I'll have a McDonald's, please?
I think it's more convenient. I think it's more at hand. And I think that's a good thing, you know, actually the changes that mean that things are a bit more accessible, that they are a bit more convenient, are good moves in the modern society. But it's how you balance that.
And we're not doing very well. I think it's probably the opposite. I think people have less time now because they're always on the move, especially in urban cities where everything's a lot more condensed. I think that the convenient lifestyle is on the apps. It's on people's phones, and they can just get food with the click of a finger. So there's no motivation for them to actually just go out and walk to the shop. And I admit, I love Deliveroo. And I love Uber Eats.
Your generation, you see, Dominique. It is. How many times a week do you think you have something like, you know, a takeaway on your phone?
Well, I've been going to the gym and, like, trying to cook more at home these last few months.
You've only just moved down to London, haven't you?
Yeah, but... I started cooking my own meals fairly quickly because I'm on a diet. But when I was at home, I probably would order, like, takeout, like, probably several times a day. Or even
a day?
Yeah.
You don't mean a day, you
mean
a week?
No, a day, like, not a day.
Just a day?
A week?
Like, but it wouldn't just... But no, it wouldn't just be... It wouldn't be like chips in a burger from McDonald's. It'd be like I'd get groceries delivered on Deliveroo. Like,
a day?
Yeah.
Several times a day?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. I don't know.
Well,
how that works.
It's pretty normal for people I know do it. I got groceries delivered.
Oh,
yeah.
You see, what you need to do is get your trainers on, walk to the shop. You can get a little trolley, like a little granny trolley. Am I right?
I do that now. I do that now because I live somewhere that's really quite convenient, and also I want to get my steps in. But before, when I was like used to love chilling in my room, especially on the weekend, you just order in.
See, I think people don't realise this is what's wrong with the youth. I can't believe I sound like I've been born in the 1950s. My mother will be so proud. But honestly, the difference in their behaviour. I mean, my 18-year-old had a friend to stay the other day, and he was there in the morning, and I said, "What do you want for breakfast, boys? Do you want some porridge? So I wake you up some porridge." She's like, porridge? Who's going to deliver porridge? No, but I make my kids porridge every morning before school. They have porridge with fruit on and honey.
That's great. I'm eating that now, but before,
good.
No.
And his mate said, "Oh, I've ordered a popular coffee brand." And I said, "What do you mean we've got coffee?" And he said, "No, I wanted some refresher drinks." And arrived at our house, two of these drinks that was basically lime cordial, and it cost this child £10 for 2 cups of lime cordial that he'd had delivered to the house. And I said, "Your parents have got more money than sense. Do they know you're spending that?" And he said, "No, they won't. They wouldn't be happy about it." But it was normal.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, don't hang out with my son. You're going to be a terrible influence. You're going to corrupt him because I'm never going to let him do that. But it's normal for them. And how do we get the message of health and what things are worth?
Oh, you know, back in the old days in the 1950s, there was a lot more people, you know, families ate together, didn't they? And that was a really good thing. And today you've got to say you're not having a smartphone, you're not having your television until you've had a meal. You know, you sit round, we have a chat around the table, you know, someone will cook the food from raw ingredients with no processed stuff, and that's going to make a daily ritual of having a healthy meal.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be enforced over a few weeks or a couple of months, and then people will get used to it. They'll probably like it, you know.
Joanne has messaged on social. She said rationing was still around in 1953, but adults and kids ate food cooked in beef dripping in lard and meat with plenty of fat. But they walked to work and the kids would walk to and from school. Life has become sedentary. Couldn't agree more. Martin has said we've all become too indulgent over food. Despite the energy crises, we are all too privileged. We used to eat to live, and now we live to eat. That is a brilliant way of putting it. And Deborah's agreeing it's mainly the lack of exercise. People don't walk, they drive everywhere. Nigel has said nobody notices the fact that we are far more sedentary now than we were in the 1950s and simply eat more than we need. It's true, isn't it? Yeah. But it's very difficult. The other thing, of course, Miata, as a mum of youngsters, you'll know, and I slightly disagree with David here when he was saying the government shouldn't be involved. The opportunities for children to have food at every stage of the day is so... we just have to say no all day. Do you say no all day? I say, no, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. No, you can't have that.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's huge opportunities. And it is, it comes back down to, when you're in the shop, what's by the till? It's a whole lot of chocolates and sweets and crisps. It's never apples or pears or whatever. So it is thrust on young kids. And this is why I actually agree with the point about meals becoming more of a family thing. That's something that we're trying to do a little bit more of, healthy meals that we all cook. But it's really hard, and people are busy, and people are under pressure, and actually they're juggling 101 things.
And it's going to kill our NHS if there's ever any NHS left in 12 months' time. Cancer Research UK say that more than 21 million UK adults will be obese by 2040. That's 36% of the adult population. The number of people living with diabetes has hit an all-time high, reaching over 4.9 million people. Another interesting little fact from this Telegraph article is that it was also a time in 1953 of much less exotic ingredients. It was a simpler time. Olive oil was sold in small bottles from chemists, and you didn't eat it, you loosened your earwax with it. So we've come a long way, have we not?
Yes, we certainly have.
Right, thank you to everybody. Thank you to my panel this evening, David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party, Dominique Samuels and Mayata Fanbula. If you missed any of today's show, you want to catch up on previous episodes, you can download the Dewbs Co podcast. It's available on Spotify, iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. I will be back tomorrow night. Nigel Farage is coming up at the top of the hour.
Yes, Bev, thank you very much indeed. Mark White, GB News' Home Affairs and Security Editor, is up at Linton-on-Ouse, which will shortly take 1,500 asylum seekers who've crossed the English Channel. We'll compare that to the 30,000 hotel rooms that are being used every night and ask which is better. We'll look at honour abuse, our GPs ignoring what's going on in some communities for fear of being called the R word. I visit a South London street and see bunting taken down by the local council because they haven't stress tested the lamppost. You can't believe it. I'll tell you how to get a free beer tonight at a Green King pub, and I'll be joined by Kalashnikov-toting Ukrainian MP Kira Ruddick, and we'll talk about what's going on in the Donbass. But before all of that, let's get the weather.
Good evening. Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Drier and a bit warmer for the long weekend ahead. For tomorrow, though, it's another cool one. And another day of dodging the downpours. There's been lots of showers around today thanks to this area of low pressure, which isn't moving very far. Not too many isobars on the chart either, which means the winds are light, which means the showers don't move very quickly. So you could get stuck under one for, well, half an hour to an hour, I suppose. Those showers continuing to just mill around through this evening, fading in some places, so turning a little drier, certainly for Northern Ireland and the eastern parts of Scotland, and where skies turn clear, it will turn quite cold for everywhere. It's a pretty chilly start, single digits, but as I say, with some clearer skies, we'll be well down into single figures. But for some, it'll be a sunny start to Tuesday. Parts of eastern Scotland, maybe Northern Ireland. It will cloud over here, however, with some outbreaks of rain. And look at that, elsewhere, just the showers get going once more. Nowhere immune, but I suspect South Wales, southwest England, not too many showers here come the afternoon. Largely dry and bright with some sunny spells. Bit of sunshine between the showers elsewhere, but the showers will be heavy in eastern England. Chance of a